Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting for March 21st, 2016. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call.
Trustee Papantos? Here. Trustee Vito?
Here.
Trustee Brady?
Here.
Trustee Kruger? Present. Trustee Vogel?
Here.
Trustee Lang?
Here.
Prisoner Juris?
Here. Entertain a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes for February 16, 2016.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Brady,
Second.
second by Trustee Kruger. Roll call.
Trustee Papantos? Here. Trustee Vito?
Here.
Trustee Brady?
Yes.
Trustee Kruger?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Prisoner Juris?
Yes. Entertain a motion to approve the special meeting of February 22nd, 2016.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Lang,
Second.
second by Trustee Vogel. Roll call.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Brady?
Yes.
Trustee Kruger?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Prisoner Juris?
Yes. Any changes to the agenda?
There are none this evening.
Citizens' concerns and comments?
There are none this evening, Mr. President.
Staff reports. Mr. Spondilis, update with Urban R2.
Thank you. About a month ago, the village president asked that we work with both the developer of the Urban R2 Wheeling Town Center development and the other governing bodies impacted by the project to make sure that we were on track with all the required easements and any necessary contracts that would allow the project to move forward. And I'm happy to say that since that time, we've had a number of meetings with all parties involved, and at this point expect there to be no delay in moving forward with the schedule that was presented to you in the last redevelopment agreement. It's been a very positive experience with all parties, both the developer and the other impacted governing bodies cooperating to make sure that this project is completed on time and particularly started on time.
Thank you. Director Milanoff, you want to add anything to it? I know you've been busy with that the last couple of days.
We've been working diligently with all the other stakeholders to keep this project on track. The developer has met with all the village staff, with community development, our village engineer, and we're moving forward. It's
Good.
very positive meetings. Thank
Good.
you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Consent agenda.
All items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the village board and will be enacted by the one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered after all other agenda items. 11A, a resolution waiving competitive bidding and authorizing acceptance of the State of Illinois contract with AT&T for a one-year renewal of a support maintenance contract for Cisco SmartNet Technical Services. 11B, resolution endorsing the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus Greenest Region Compact 2.
Thank you. Any concerns, questions? Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Papantos.
Second.
Second by Trustee Kruger. Roll call.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Brady?
Yes.
Trustee Kruger?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Prisoner Juris?
Yes. 13A.
13A, resolution approving the FY17 budget for Chicago Executive Airport.
Thank you. We have Airport Executive Director Abbott and Chief Financial Officer Scott Campbell. Thank you guys for coming. Any questions from the board?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Thank you. The master plan for the budget, how much have we spent so far, and what will be the total amount for the master plan, and when do we expect to finish this?
Sure, I can answer that for you. You know, as you're aware, we're in phase 2 of the master plan. We're on task 1 of phase 2. There's going to be another task after this. We got the figures here. Let's see. So last year we spent $126,000. That was on phase 1. This year so far we're at $157,000. Now this year's total, the state, as you remember, agreed to chip in 50% of that. So they're going to match those funds this year. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when we think they'll match those funds. So that's what's been spent so far, a total of $283,000 on the master plan. Now, task 2 of phase 2 gets into more facilities requirements and environmental studies, and so that is still to come. That's going to probably be, I hate to guess, but another couple $100,000 at least to complete the study. But we think it's well worth it. It's been a long time since the airport's done a master plan, and so we will also seek state participation in the task 2, so the next phase of this as well.
So we're looking at roughly $500,000 to
Probably more than,
complete this?
yes.
I guess the bottom line question is, what do the stakeholders, the Village of Wheeling and the City of Prospect Heights, get out of this in the
Sure.
long run?
Sure. Well, it's a comprehensive plan, so it not only looks inside the fence and what requirements are going to be required of us in the next 20 to 30 years, but it also looks at the surrounding area outside the fence and what's good for the village, as well as the airport and kind of that relationship that's supposed to be there. So I think that the village is going to see some real impact on this as well. We've talked to the village. We're going to continue talking to the village. We're going to form a committee group, which will have a citizen from the village and the City of Prospect Heights on the committee as well. So that's coming up soon as well. So, definitely input from the village and the city both will be part of this whole process. And we hope it's a good relationship going forward and that the end product will be good, not only for the airport, but for the village and the city.
And you mentioned that the state matching, and we all know the state of our state, so to speak. Is there a contingency plan if the state doesn't come through?
Well, we've budgeted the full amount, anticipating that may not happen. We don't think it'll happen, but just in case it does, we've planned ahead that, we're paying the full bill regardless.
And I have to put this in for my friends and neighbors. The East Siders have been plagued with noise for a number of years. We need noise monitoring and we need noise abatement. And would like to see that this is continually, that something is budgeted to help some of this, and even curfews and looking into it if it is a Part 160 study going forward with
Sure.
that.
Sure thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Vogel?
Yeah, on your cover letter, the capital A projects, you mentioned the total cost of the projects are estimated at 12 million plus. I realize that's a long-term number, correct?
It is.
But then you say that the local shares expect to be 916,000
Right.
and grants of 1,560,000. That doesn't add up to the 12 million, obviously. Is there any idea of that 12 million, what you think you'll get for grant money to cover the long term, or is it too far out?
It is a little far to project a lot of that stuff out, but in many of the cases, the state will pay contractors directly for things and won't actually pass through us, so rather than clutter up our sheet with something that passes through, I chose to leave that off
Off of it.
and only list the things that we were actually responsible for.
Okay. Is the state actually paying any grants out at this point in time, or are they still, is there money available yet, or are they pretty much froze it?
Now, the state portion of these FAA grants, they've been coming through, not only for us, but for other airports. So that funding is coming through for our projects.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Anybody else? Trustee Lang?
Just to mention, Jamie, and you might want to expound on this, that master plan, although it wasn't necessarily required right here, right now, it is required by the FAA, is that correct?
It's highly encouraged that airports our size do a master plan.
And how many years between do they recommend?
Sure. Master plans are usually good for about 20 years, and it's been, I think, close to 30 since we've done ours. So it was overdue. We felt that it was about time to accomplish one. Sure.
Thank you.
Just a couple of things I want to add to it that Mary had brought up earlier, that our Economic Development Department has played an active role, it continues to play an active role regarding outside of the footprint of the airport, regarding some areas that we had annexed in about 12 years ago, the industrial lane specifically, and potential new development going in there. That would directly not just benefit the airport, but also us. One of the things I've had a personal agenda on is the noise issues. And I'm happy to see that Jamie and the board have taken that seriously too, and allocating dollars in there to continue to do their studies regarding noise issues. I'm in constant communication with Trustee Lang, who spreads the message to the other board members that represent Wheeling, but also, most importantly, with Jamie. And the mayor and I are both in very sound to the point that we want to hear something about this. We want to do the studies on there and see what opportunities are there. When I sat on that airport board, there was an opportunity there with the Part 150 study and stuff. Fortunately, during the start of the recession, things were, back on the shelf. But I'm glad to see that's being resurrected again and looked at. We need to continue to be conscious of our neighbors, our residents, and move forward in a positive way to benefit not just the airport, but the communities around it. And I see this finally happening after many, many years of just talk.
Sure.
We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. And everybody had their own personal agenda about it. And today I'm happy to notice and see and read and communicate that everybody seems to be on the same page to do something. And I think we're on the right track in getting that done. So I thank you guys for that and the board. So any other questions from anybody? If not, I entertain a motion to approve the budget.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Vogel,
Second.
second by Trustee Lang. Roll call.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Brady?
Yes.
Trustee Krueger?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
President Argyros?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good job, guys. Thanks. 13B, 1 and 2.
I'll read them both.
Okay.
Two resolutions regarding the Arlington Club Sanitary Sewer Force Main Repair Project. Item B1, resolution accepting a bid and approving a contract with Maneval Construction Company Incorporated for the Arlington Club Sanitary Sewer Force Main Repair Project. Item B2, resolution accepting a proposal from Christopher B. Burke Engineering Limited for construction engineering services for the Arlington Club Sanitary Sewer Force Main Repair Project.
Thank you. Assistant Director Bezier, how are you?
Thank you. The current sanitary sewer force main in the Arlington Club subdivision has experienced failures and is in requirement of replacement to sufficiently service the residents in Arlington Club. Item B1 is a resolution requesting approval for a contract with Maneval Construction Company for construction of a new sanitary sewer force main in Arlington Club. 6 bids were received for this project, and Maneval Construction Company was the lowest qualified bid for the cost of $756,725. Funding is available in CIP funds. The project entails replacing 3,400 feet of ductile iron pipe with 10-inch HDPE or plastic pipe directionally bored to reduce property restoration and open excavation. The existing main will then be appropriately abandoned. For item B2, staff is requesting approval for a proposal from Christopher Burke Engineering in the amount of $45,000 for engineering inspection services for the Arlington Club Sanitary Sewer Force Main Project. These services are recommended due to the location and the specialized scope of work for the project. Funding is also available in CIP. Christopher Burke Engineering was obtained in 2014 to complete an analysis of this force main and design the solution, thus having knowledge of the plans and specifications for this project.
Thank you. Questions? Again, you know what? The residents in Arlington Club, we ask that they have patience because there's going to be some construction work being done there. But again, you know what? The Village of Wheeling, again, with the infrastructure improvements that we continue to do on an annual basis the last few years, I think it really benefits all the residents. And here's a subdivision in our community that we noticed, and I'm sure their management company had noticed things were wrong, needed to be repaired. So kudos to our engineering staff, our public works staff, our community development staff on recognizing the problem and moving forward. And this is good tax dollars being spent because we are reinvesting back into their subdivisions and having a good quality of life there for those folks. So again, I ask that they have patience. I'm sure I'm going to get phone calls about the dust and the trucks and everything, but this is a good thing for them to have, and just be a little patient with it. Anybody have any questions? If not, I entertain a motion for 13B1.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by trustee Lang, second by trustee Vogel. Roll call.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Brady?
Yes.
Trustee Krueger?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
President Argyros?
Yes. Entertain a motion for 13B2.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by trustee Lang, second by trustee Papantos. Roll call.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Brady?
Yes.
Trustee Krueger?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
President Argyros?
Yes, thank you. 13C.
Resolution accepting a proposal from Hager Engineering LLC for consulting services for the 2017 water main replacement, street resurfacing, and sidewalk construction project.
Thank you. Assistant Public Works Director Bajer.
Thank you. Staff is requesting approval of a proposal from Hager Engineering for consulting services in the amount of $72,200 for the 2017 water main replacement project. These services include surveying, designing, contract document preparations, and obtaining permits from IEPA and Metropolitan Water Reclamation District for approximately 5,150 lineal feet of water main and associated improvements, including curbs and street pavement for Carpenter Avenue, Glen Drive, and Shepherd Avenue. Staff has worked with Hager for several years, and they've also worked with Hager for the 2014 and 2015 water main and street projects.
Thank you. Questions?
So moved.
Motion by trustee
Second.
Brady, second by trustee Krueger. Roll call. Thank you.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Brady?
Yes.
Trustee Krueger?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
President Argyros?
13D.
Resolution amending the Village of Wheeling annual budget for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2015 and ending December 31st, 2015.
Thank you. Director Monishing.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight I have a very brief presentation regarding the general fund surplus policy that the board recently approved. And I'm going to try to kill two birds with one stone because I'm also going to try to make this my quarterly financial update that Trustee Krueger asked me to do a while back. So I'll give you a sneak preview of what the final numbers for fiscal year 2015 look like. And then in a few months, I'll be back to give you more details. So if the board recalls, for 2015, we budgeted a deficit of $753,849 in the general fund. And as it turns out, as of today, subject to some possible audit adjustments, it looks like we're going to end the year with an actual surplus of over $1.8 million. So we had a great year. And as you'll see in this column labeled variance, most of that was because our revenues were significantly stronger than we anticipated. The percentage was 5.83% more than what we budgeted at $2.1 million. And on the expenditure side of the equation, we spent about $430,000 less than we anticipated or budgeted, which was within 1.14% of the original budget amount. And as I've said in the past, our goal when we budget, especially on the expenditure side, is to come in anywhere between 98 and 101 or 102% of our budget. If we do that, I think we're doing a good job. So to be right at around 99% was really good for the year. And as I said, most of the positive variance was on the revenue side, and I wanted to just show you briefly where that happened. And the majority of it came from the sales tax category. I have a note here that we had 4 one-time only sales tax transactions that occurred during the year, totaling nearly $1 million. This is something that happens from time to time. We don't expect this to happen every year. We've never had 4 in one year. Usually it's 1 or 2 every few years. So this was a great development for us, and that explains most of the variance in the sales tax budget versus actual. If we hadn't had those 4 one-time only transactions, our sales tax revenue actually would have been below budget for the year, so that was a positive development. Similarly, with income and state use tax, came in much stronger than we anticipated. State use tax was up in part because of Amazon.com. Amazon last year began remitting use tax to the state of Illinois, and the village receives a share of purchases that are made on the internet that are attributed to items that are used within the state of Illinois. So that explains some of the increase in that category. Property tax was a little bit higher than budgeted. We also received a legal settlement that we did not budget for because we didn't anticipate receiving it. And then there's all the other revenue line items that make up the general fund, and those were up by $769,000 over what we budgeted. So again, a very good year for us. If you'll recall, back on January 4th, the village board approved a financial policy, a general fund surplus policy, and the policy said that anytime we end the year with a surplus in the general fund, that the board shall consider contributing some of that surplus to either the pension funds, the capital equipment replacement fund, or the OPEB trust fund if we've established one. So there's no obligation on the part of the board to do this, but there is an obligation to at least think about it. And of course, we also have a policy that says we have to maintain a 25% fund balance, 25% of annual operating expenditures. So there's a balancing act between contributing surplus to the pension funds or SURF and also maintaining a 25% fund balance in the general fund. So this year, because we are anticipating ending the year with a $1.8 million surplus, we're recommending that the village board contribute $1 million of that to the police and fire pension funds and the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. Those are our 3 pension funds. And what I show here is these are numbers from our actuary. And what you'll see in the asset column is how much money each of the pension funds has. And the total is just under $100 million for the 3 pension funds. The liability column shows how much we owe to the pension funds, and so that's $149 million, and that leaves an unfunded liability of nearly $50 million, which is money that we have to make up by the year 2040. We're paying that off over time. Every year we have a property tax levy that requires us to make a contribution to the pension funds, and we're going to amortize that over the next several years to 2040. But as of right now, our overall funded percentage is just under 67%. Now, the state says that you have to be at least 90% funded by 2040, so obviously we've got a ways to go, and that's why we're suggesting that the board contribute $1 million to try to reduce this unfunded liability. The $1 million we're recommending would break down like as shown here. So $412,000 roughly would go to the police pension fund, $461,000 to fire, and $127,000 to IMRF. And the way we came up with those numbers is we looked at each pension fund's share of the total unfunded liability and allocated it on a pro rata basis. We thought that was the most fair way to do it. And the question has come up from some trustees, what does this do if we contribute this $1 million? What does this do to our overall funded percentage? And the answer is, unfortunately, not a whole lot. It would change roughly by 2/3%, from 66.57% to 67.24%. And that's just because we have a large unfunded liability. So even $1 million, even though it's a lot of money, it doesn't make a huge difference in the short term, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. And
Michael, is that
yeah.
49 million a moving target? Does it adjust?
It is adjusted every year based on changes in actuarial assumptions and investment returns and things like that. So, I can stand here today and say that the change is, it's going to improve our situation to 67%, and then when we get the actuarial reports in a few months, it might be a completely different percentage. It should be close, though. So, yes, to answer your question, it fluctuates because of if you have a good investment year versus a bad year, and if you have to switch mortality tables and things like that, it can change.
Michael, shouldn't you point out, though, that over the 40 years that we have the fund get fully funded, that $1 million might become $4 million because of the
Yes.
growth? So it's important that we invest today.
Absolutely, and
So
I have
people understand that.
I have a slide that is going to address that point, but that's absolutely correct. So our investment return assumption, the actuary assumes we're going to earn 7.5% each year in the police and fire pension funds, as does IMRF. So when you contribute $1 million or any amount to the pension funds, it's the equivalent of getting a 7.5% return on your investment. And that's why I think this is such a good idea for the village to pursue. Trustee Papantos asked me a question earlier today about how do we compare as compared to other communities in terms of our funded percentage. And what you'll see is that Wheeling at this point in time is pretty typical of our neighbors in terms of our funded status when you look at all three pension funds. You have some outliers where Arlington Heights and Buffalo Grove are a little better funded than we are, and Niles and Des Plaines are not as well funded, but we're kind of right in the middle there. And then the other item that I looked at is how much money do each of these communities owe? What are their total unfunded liabilities, and how do we compare? And actually, in this case, it's good news because we're on the low end in terms of what we owe, about $55 million compared to a lot more for some of these communities. Now, obviously, some communities are larger than us, so it would make sense that they would have larger unfunded liabilities. But there are some that are smaller, like Niles, and yet they owe their pension funds considerably more than we do. So I think that's good news. And if anybody's wondering why this $55 million number is a little bit different than the $49 million number that I mentioned earlier, it's because for this slide, what I did was I looked at the actuarial reports from the state's Department of Insurance because I wanted this slide to be an apples-to-apples comparison. Just about every community hires their own actuary, and they use different investment return assumptions, and in some cases, different mortality tables and salary increase assumptions and so forth. So it's hard to compare if you're just looking at whichever actuary they hired. But if you look at the state of Illinois' actuary, they use the same assumptions for every community. So it makes for a very good comparison, and this is really an apples-to-apples comparison. So our actuary thinks that, based on his assumptions, that we owe $50 million to the pension funds. The state of Illinois believes it's actually a little bit more because they use a 6.75% investment return assumption as opposed to the 7.5% that we're using. So again, back to the general fund surplus policy, I think is an excellent policy because it allows the village to reduce its long-term liability. As I said, Trustee Vogel asked before, we're getting a 7.5% return on our investment by making this contribution. There's the issue of intergenerational equity, which we've talked about before, which basically says that if we're enjoying the services today from police, fire, public works, and so forth, we should pay for those services today and not push off those costs to future generations that are not going to benefit from them. And by making a contribution like this, it sends a very strong message to the bond rating agencies. In fact, recently we had a bond rating review with Standard & Poor's and with Fitch Rating Services, and John Mullanaphy participated in that process with me. And one of the questions they asked us is, what are you doing to address this long-term unfunded pension liability? And this is the kind of thing that we can say to them that we're doing to address that problem, and that reflects favorably on the village. And it's also good from the standpoint of the residents and businesses who see that we're trying to address this problem. So that's essentially it as far as the funding, or as far as the surplus policy is considered. And then I just wanted to mention that sometime in the next 2 to 3 months, I'd like to come back to the board and have you consider passing a police and fire pension fund funding policy. The funding policy would dictate exactly what our investment return assumption is, what our salary increase assumptions are, and so forth. And right now, as I mentioned, we're using 7.5% as our return assumption for police and fire, and it's just too high. We're not earning 7.5% on our investments. I don't expect us to earn 7.5% anytime soon with the interest rate environment that we're living in now. And most communities, on average, are closer to 7 to 7.25%. So I think we need to take a look at that, and I'd like to do that in a couple months. And if we could lower that investment return assumption, it would strengthen the pension fund's financial position in the long term, and as well as the village's financial position as well. So that's basically it, and I'm happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Questions? Trustee Pontos?
One quick question. What is OPEB trust fund, please?
So we have, OPEB stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. Okay, and basically what it is in our case and in most communities' cases is the cost of retiree health insurance benefits. So you've heard me talk before about many years ago, prior to 1981, we offered a benefit to employees who worked here for, I think, at least 20 years and retired with a pension. They get free health insurance for themselves for the rest of their life. And as a result, we have a large, another unfunded liability related to that health insurance piece. So some communities have decided to set up trust funds, much like a pension trust fund, and set aside money to pay for that liability over time. Most communities have not, and we have not, choosing rather to just pay it on an annual basis, kind of a pay-as-you-go type approach. So if the village board ever wanted to actually establish an OPEB trust fund, the policy states that, you know, some of that surplus money could be contributed to that, but I wouldn't recommend it at this time because I think the pension funds are a much larger priority.
Thank you.
Trustee Vito?
Yeah, Michael, can you explain how lowering the rate of return would put us in a better financial position? Because it just, logically to me, if you lower your rate of return and you still have the same liabilities in the end, it would just seem like you'd be in a worse position, but obviously that's not the case.
It kind of works the opposite way. So if when the actuary is making assumptions about what we're going to earn on our investments going out into the future, and if you assume you're going to earn 7.5 or 8.5 as we did several years ago or more, it lowers the amount that you have to contribute now because you're assuming that you're going to earn more money in the future. If you lower the investment return assumption, you actually have to contribute more in the short term because what you're effectively saying is that we're not going to get as much of a return on our investments, and therefore to pay off that unfunded liability, you have to put in more money in the short term.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
And I think that's what happened back in the 90s with some of our pensions, based on the assumptions from the actuaries, thinking if we were going to make 8.5 to 9% on a return. There were many years they did zero contributions to those pensions based on the assumptions. By doing it this way and having policy in place, it's more realistic, and there's going to be a future contribution every year moving forward versus saying worried about being overfunded. Well, it didn't happen. We were underfunded, and we're seeing those numbers today.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I get it.
Anybody down there? Just a comment. About 2 years ago, John, I think it was, that I sat down with Michael and John and John, and we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel regarding getting out of the recession a little bit. We saw the numbers starting to grow a little bit. We saw interest in our community regarding companies wanting to move in and businesses wanting to move in, and it's happened. But one of the things I stressed, and with great support of the board, let's look at policies. What are we doing moving forward? Let's not get caught up in policies that were created 20, 30, 40 years ago and say this is the status quo. Let's think out of the box, especially with the bond ratings. The bond ratings, when the Economic Development Department sits down with a business, they want to see our financials as much as we want to see theirs too. But the bond rating is huge, and I think that's a big thing that lures businesses into this community. So we sat down and, with the support of the board, is to come up, if we were fortunate enough to have surplus money, let's not think that we're rich as a village, but let's take care of our long-term debt, our obligations. There's proposed legislation down there in Springfield looking to go beyond 2040, because realistically, as you saw some of the numbers of our neighbors, they're never going to make that 90% threshold come 2040. So we're looking at doing amortization beyond 2040 to be more realistic and come up with a basic policy to take care of the pension debt. We're doing that, and I'm happy we're doing that. And as long as we keep our reserves intact, we're balancing our budget, which we did first time in 8 years, and seeing our finances strong. I think this enables us to keep the employees intact, to keep our core services intact, and stay focused on not accumulating any more new debt, which we haven't in years, and maintaining what we're able to afford. So I think what we're doing here, I commend this board, our staff, for really thinking out of the box, but being more realistic to, like you gave the example, let's lower that investment return rate of 7% versus 7.5%. That's more realistic. Let's not get caught up what happened 25, 30 years ago and seeing us at a $50 million debt. You know, times will change. We don't have crystal balls. Michael wish he did, but we don't. But I think we're taking proactive approaches on really keeping our finances in place here and having a policy for future boards in the future say, hey, this is policy, this is how we're going to do it, and take those dollars that we literally had to borrow from, whether it be our reserve fund for our SURF, our liability fund, to try to balance our budgets during a real hard time for 7, 8 years. And now we're seeing a return on that changing, and I think we're going to do okay. So I thank the board for really having an in-depth conversation on that. I thank Michael and John. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but I think it was a good move on our part.
Absolutely, and it was good vision from the board and hard work from staff to do that, and I think these policies, whatever they may be, help the board make sound financial decisions. Much like tonight where we're talking about a surplus, it's always best to make these policy changes and put these policies in place when you're not having to make decisions between which fund you're going to take from. You have the opportunity now to set in place a foundation for yourselves in the next couple of years for future boards to really understand the priorities and to be able to better make those decisions based on, you know, some sound advice at this point, and being able to take a step back and look at the long-term picture now when you're not having to concentrate on the short term because there's an economic downturn. So I absolutely concur, and I think all of these policies are a step in the right direction.
Thank you. Trustee Lang?
Are any other communities doing this that you think of?
You know, I don't know specifically if there are any communities that are doing this, but I was actually just at a pension seminar on Friday, and they had a session on this exact concept of making additional contributions to your pension funds. And they talked about the as Trustee Vogel pointed out, the long-term value in doing that. Obviously, you're reducing your long-term costs significantly by making these additional contributions, so it's definitely a good thing to consider. But to answer your question, I can't say for sure if there are other communities that are actually doing that or not.
And I'm sure they'll be looking at our community to move forward. So again, we're one of the model communities thinking out of the box. So
Aren't we always?
Trustee Kruger.
Quick, the policy changes that we're talking about, when would we see those or discuss those? At budget time or?
Well, no, they come up, the one that was referenced by Director Monchain earlier was just from this year, January of this year.
Okay,
Yeah, this
so
one
we
was
can
approved
See
on
that at
June.
any time, all right.
Yeah.
And the one that was discussed, maybe the next 2 or 3 months,
Yeah.
really it's a calculation of making sure that we understand what our assumptions are, because as Trustee Vito said, when you lower those expectations, you're going to increase your contributions. So we don't want to go from 7.5, say, to 6.5, just because it makes the number look better. Well, it makes the number look better, except your contributions then go way up. So it's a balancing act, so it's going to take some time in order to make sure that when we suggest a policy change to you in that regard, that it's absolutely the right number, both short and long term. So I think the overall answer is, as we write them, you will see them. We're not going to wait just until budget time.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion by trustee Lang, second by trustee Vogel. Roll call.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Brady?
Yes.
Trustee Krueger?
Yes,
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
President Argyros?
Yes.
Thank you.
Big thanks to the rest of your department. Okay. 13E.
Resolution authorizing the publication of the official zoning map to document zoning map corrections and recent zoning changes.
Thank you, Director Jennings.
Thank you. This is a action that we take every year about this time to reflect all of the different minor corrections that we've observed in the zoning map throughout the year. This includes things such as subdivisions where the parcel lines have changed, labels that may be overlapping one another on the map, and then we also take the opportunity to cross-reference it with all of the rezonings that may have occurred. This year, you do have the Kraus Lane rezoning and a couple of other minor label corrections.
Okay, questions? Trustee Brady?
Can't we get a brief history of what you've done here with these corrections, instead of just saying we corrected the map and identify one of them? Of course, we always have access to the map, but in a lot of instances, when something is changed, we get all the little changes that have taken place, which should be too hard to do.
President Argyros?
Yes.
Isn't that on the map that we were given in the left-hand corner?
It's right here.
Yeah,
Right.
what's that on the left-hand corner? Is that what we're talking about? Left-hand lower corner?
Yes.
Yes, right here.
Is that 3-4 years worth of history?
They actually got that. I'm sorry, it's real tight here, read. It goes back to 2012.
Yeah, it's real hard to
Yeah.
read, but
Sure, if the question is that you'd like to see some of the specifics, we could highlight a map for you to show. It's mostly things like the subdivision parcel lines from subdivisions that have been approved. Occasionally, it's some fairly mundane stuff, such as labels that overlap one another so you can't read it.
Maybe highlight the map itself with those
Sure.
changes.
We could do that.
I think it's important because a lot of times if somebody knows something about an area and don't keep track of the map, you might miss something. You know, a change might take place and you're not aware of it. So,
I guess a question I have too, Andrew, is the Plan Commission looking at any of these other areas that haven't changed that possibly should be changed?
No, this is not for that purpose. This is more documenting what has been corrected in terms of subdivisions, but they could absolutely look at it if we want to do a study of whether or not the zoning matches
I think it's
up
been a
with the
while. We
actual-
probably should.
Sure.
Look at things that are R something or B1 something and that really realistically should be something else. Maybe do it in sections, you know, and do it over a period of time, but I think it'd be a good idea to, let's look at that, because I think it's been a while since we did the comprehensive plan even, and to look at some of that stuff, so.
It's been about 11 years since we did a major.
Yeah, and I think we really need to look at it again. Okay? Anybody else?
Just
Trustee
one quick one. Andrew, can you break this map off of here? Just send us just the map itself, so, I mean, then we can all reference it on our pads.
Oh, sure. We can put that in your iPad folder.
Okay.
Sure.
Perfect.
Any other questions? I entertain a motion.
so moved.
Motion by trustee Brady,
second?
second by trustee Krueger. Roll call.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Brady?
Yes.
Trustee Krueger?
Yes,
Trustee Vogel?
yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
President Argyros?
Yes. Official communication, start with trustee Brady.
None tonight, thank you.
Trustee Vogel,
Is Mr. Jennings the zoning administrator
Yes.
that we
Right
refer
there.
to as, okay. That was all I had, a question.
The administrator, I like that. Trustee Papantos.
Just want to wish Clerk Simpson a happy birthday, I believe this Saturday coming up.
Thank you.
Been
Happy
celebrating
birthday.
it for 2 weeks.
It's a long birthday, huh?
Yeah.
Take advantage.
Happy birthday. Trustee Kruger.
Thank you. I'm just very excited that this Saturday is the St. Baldrick's event at Home Bar in Arlington Heights. I am pleased to report that Underwriters Laboratories came through with total cash donations of $1,010 and a $750 sponsorship, so about $1,800. So happy shaving. Everybody should come out and brave the shave. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Trustee Vito.
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Trustee Lang.
Nothing for me, thanks.
Clerk Simpson.
This Wednesday, the Wheeling Historical Society at their normal Wednesday meeting on March 23rd at 6:30. The wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. It's Rochelle Pennington will tell the remarkable story of the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, the well-known Great Lakes shipwreck that occurred in rough water on November 10th, 1975, with the loss of all 29 officers and crew. It starts at 6:30 at the Chamber Park Church Building at 251 North Wolf Road.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Manager's Fundos.
I have nothing this evening, thank you.
I just wanted to share something. Last week, along with Village Manager Svandilis, Business Development Coordinator Drew Garcia, and myself, had the honor and the pleasure of meeting with the Consul General of Japan, Iwado, at his residence in Evanston. He reached out to us after a couple meetings and wanted to look at some economic development opportunities and also find out what our chamber's all about and what the Village of Wheeling's all about. And very nice, very hospitable. His residence is as a mansion there on Sheridan Road in Evanston, just beautiful. But he had key Japanese business leaders and agencies who participated at the dinner. The Chief Executive Director of Japan External Trade Organization, the President, Vice President, and Executive Director of the Japanese Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber President is also from the Chicago office, manager of Nippon Steel, and one of the largest steel manufacturers in the world. So we've become even more global in our task to reach out to businesses across the globe. And I think this was a wonderful meeting. We were there at dinner, actually. We were there probably a good three and a half hours. And they're very excited to see what we're doing. They love this airport that we have. They think it's neat. They know our industrial base. They love the activity that we're doing with the chamber, reaching out, networking. You talk about finances as a village. These folks know our finances better than we do. And that was brought up, and they actually mentioned that, especially when you had executive and presidents of major steel companies. So I think there might be some opportunity down the road, but cultural, business, commerce, it was a very great, honorable meeting to be at. So this has really been a whirlwind the last 6-7 months with all of us here, and I think everybody here should be proud of that we're getting that kind of interest. And kudos to our economic development staff. Drew was, as you can all imagine, she was the center of attention that night, and a lot of fun. But she knows her stuff, and she impressed many of those people in that industry. So she was good. But I want to thank her for that. Also, the closing of Indian Trails Library, just to remind everybody, April 4th, they'll be having a temporary location down the street at 70 West Dundee Road in Buffalo Grove. We're excited with their $14+ million addition here in our community, and looking forward to the groundbreaking and the ribbon cutting when that day comes. The village continues to be working with the Park District, just a FYI, on coming up some ways and cooperatives, integration with our senior community, and we'll get back to the public and the rest of the board on that shortly. So we got some ideas that we're working on that. So I just wanted to share that with everybody, and at this time I'll entertain a motion to approve the bills for March 3rd through the 16th, 2016.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Papantos, second by?
Second.
Trustee Vito. Roll call?
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Brady?
Yes.
Trustee Krueger?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
President Juris?
Yes. We do have executive session this evening for the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the village and pending probable and/or imminent litigation. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Krueger, second by
Second?
Trustee Papantos. Roll call?
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Brady?
Yes.
Trustee Krueger?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
President Juris?
Yes. We're going to go in executive session immediately. Thank you.